Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today on Living Mythology, I'm proud to bring you the scholars from the edge of time, Nicholas Diak and Michele Brittany, and also their felines.
You all will see a cat butt walk occasionally by, as is SOP. Hey, good to see you, sir.
Good to see you too.
Well, greetings and thank you, Hercules, for always that wonderful introduction. Hopefully, we will have another episode this evening in which we live up to and perhaps exceed expectations.
You always have from our very first conversation, so I no doubt you will tonight as well.
Yeah. Well, and this is Cecily. She is our resident podcast.
Vidcast podcast.
Yes, she's our producer at this end to keep us on our toes.
That's right. She could be a producer.
Yes. So with that, Nick, did you want to start off?
Sure. So just a quick catch up since last time we hung out. A little slow on my end. Slow burn on some longer, you know, projects like the Emmanuel book and stuff. But the only like writing thing I've gotten out recently, oh good, nice and censored, is last time I shared I did a review of the Neo Jungle Girl comic Vanya issue 1. I've got a strategically placed post-it on this one. I've now
Well,
reviewed issue 2. There's going to be 12 of them. They're published at my website, but they'll also be published in the National Pantheons Journal, which is an Edgar Rice Burroughs themed digital zine. So that's like the kind of newest little bit of fun writing, just to keep output coming out.
Mm-hmm. For me, I would say, Sean and I continue to work on forward with regards to the Mummy book that we are co-editing.
awesome.
We had our revision plans approved by the publisher and our editor, which was great. So we worked diligently to re-edit and also incorporate the feedback from both reviewers, peer reviewers that we had. Go through the manuscript, and those are off. So now it's kind of a wait for those to start coming back in. I would say most of them were small edits. A couple of essays needed a little more work, but on the whole, I feel like we had really, really great feedback from both reviewers. One was definitely, hey, yes, I definitely see the value of publishing this. The other one was a bit more reserved, but
Well, that's the purpose of reviewer number 2 is always the
yeah, you
one.
get a balance. You had a good spectrum from both of them, and they both gave great feedback. And of course, we have wonderful support from our publisher, and so we'll be moving forward with that. Yeah, I think that's probably the big thing for me at the moment, is working on that. And then I do work at a paper crafting store. And so I've actually gotten into doing a little bit of teaching, demoing, and I find a, a great amount of satisfaction from that, as well as inspiration. So I'm very excited about the path that's kind of come before me working at this local store, and the opportunities that are starting to open up with regards to that employment. It's very satisfying, and I'm excited about some of the aspects of the path that I'm starting to go down related to that. So,
I'm
anyway,
glad to have that, and you felt good about it last time we spoke, also. So I'm glad that good feeling is still there, and that a path is starting to present itself.
yeah, definitely. It's still challenging, but there's a lot of um, satisfaction and yeah, fulfillment. That's the word I was trying to think of. A lot of fulfillment related to it. Back at you.
Not much else going on, just normal work stuff, still learning to drive. I do want to show off some things that will lead into tonight's episode of our discussion, but I have 3, about to be 4, movies autographed in the past couple months, all by the Hammer actress Victoria Vetri. She signed my copy of When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth.
Oh, wow.
She's the lead actress in that. She signed my copy of Invasion of the Bee Girls. And she signed my other copy of, oh, I have it in a slipcase, of Invasion of the Bee Girls.
I have several copies of that as well.
We're in the Bee Girls Club. But that will play into our talk here in a little bit. So I just wanted to show off those kind of cool artifacts. She's a interesting person if you read her Wikipedia page. She might have done some attempt at murder, but in some iconic films like Rosemary's Baby, and we'll talk about later in a minute.
Okay. Well, I will say that we do have a little bit of stories, and we do have a little connection with one of the actors in tonight's film that we met at a collector's show, and I'll talk more about that when we get to that.
I guess we're ready to introduce tonight's topic.
I think we're ready.
All right.
Our producers, however, is sleeping on the job now.
So tonight we are going to talk about a peplum genre we have not discussed before, and that is the Mesoamerican peplum film. Basically pre-Spanish conquistador in America. So I have a copy of a movie called Kings of the Sun with Yul Brynner, which we all know from Westworld and
The King and I.
The King and I. But what's
The Magnificent Seven.
Magnificent Seven. What's the film we talked about though with the Queen of Sheba?
Oh.
It
Oh.
should be up there.
I thought it was she, but that's not right. It's her name and where she's from. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
It's over there. I forgot.
Yeah.
But we talked about that a year or so ago. The Solomon and Sheba.
Yeah, I knew there was a name.
So Yul Brynner comes back to star in another definitely historic epic, and my copy is signed by the Hammer horror actress Victoria Vetri, who has just the tiniest bit part in here. But that's kind of what led to us to talk about this. I picked this up originally because of it's a different type of peplum. It takes place in Mexico/Texas, and for all purposes, it's a peplum. So, something different. So here we go with the plot. In the Yucatan Peninsula, prior to the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors, flourished the Mayan civilization. They had a great and advanced empire, but practiced human sacrifice to appease their gods. One day, a rival Mayan kingdom led by Hunac Keel begins his conquest of the Mayan kingdom, armed with advanced metal swords. Keel leads an attack on a Mayan pyramid, killing the current Mayan king, causing his son, Balaam, to ascend the throne. Balaam wants to attack, but is instead talked into fleeing. He technically abducts an entire Mayan town for their boats, women, and workers, and sets sail across the Gulf of Mexico. The trip is dangerous, and the displaced Mayans finally come ashore where Texas is, and they proceed to build a town. Later on, a party of Native Americans, led by Black Eagle, happen upon one of the Mayans' boats. Black Eagle reports to his tribe and then sets off to scout the town and abduct one of its people. In the process, though, he is discovered, captured, and wounded by the Mayans. A Mayan priest suggests using Black Eagle as their sacrifice, although Balaam does not like this idea as he abhors the practice. Black Eagle doesn't take well to captivity, so Ishel, the daughter of a Mayan village elder, who Balaam sort of loves but sort of doesn't, is sent in to heal the Native American. In the process, they both kind of fall in love with each other. Eventually, the day comes that Black Eagle is to be sacrificed. He doesn't take well to this and is brought to the Mayan pyramid. Balaam, however, sets him free to go back to his tribe and say they want peace. A Mayan priest decides to take his own life to fulfill the sacrifice part. As Black Eagle leaves, his tribe arrives. Both the Mayans and the Native Americans find peace and try to live with each other and teach each other different things, like using a loom and writing. However, jealousy grows between Black Eagle and Balaam over Ishel. Black Eagle and his tribe leave. Soon after, Hunok Keel and his army arrive in boats, having pursued the Mayans across the Gulf. A large battle breaks out between the two Mayan factions. Black Eagle and his tribe return to the Mayans, uh, the second one, not the first one, to help repel Keel's men. It's an epic battle atop and around the Mayan temple, and Balaam and his people are victorious, but Black Eagle is mortally wounded. Balaam addresses his people, saying there will be no more sacrifices, and he and Ishel wind up together. The end.
Hercules, have you seen this film?
I don't know. I've seen so many films over the course of lifetime. I was trying to see if I remembered any of the scenes. I
Mhm.
do like the South American ones, including Hercules and the Children of the Sun, which I think were Incas rather than Mayans. And there was Mel Gibson's Minnesota.
Apocalyptica.
Yeah, so I like those type of films. So I might have seen it, but I don't remember it if I saw it.
Okay.
This was a first time watch for both of us for
Yes.
this one. So, Michele, general thoughts on Kings of the Sun.
I liked it. I think it did have there was definitely some issues with it, and that kind of comes down to some of the casting that's been brought out by critics in the past. But I do think that there's merit to the film, and I think it's definitely worth a watch. I really appreciated the fact that this is a Kino release,
Mhm.
so the quality of the film is definitely better than some of the other some of the unfortunate other films that we've watched where they haven't been restored. There hasn't been an effort. You get the really fuzzy pan and scan, and you know,
5th-generation VHS copy. That's
yeah. So this is definitely I think it's accessible to a great variety of people if they're interested, and I think it adds to the more general dialogue conversation that we have about the peplum, and getting to see a different perspective regarding that genre. So, and I'm actually want to watch it again.
Ah.
So, anyway, what about your general?
Michelle definitely liked it more than me. I will say it is a fascinating film. I
Mhm.
was actually hoping it would be kind of like a secret hidden treasure of a film out there, like, ah, here's a movie from the past that no one knows really about, and oh wow, it's really good. Um, it's not great, but it's also not bad. I'd say it's above middle of the road, but that's fine. It's just overall, though, it is fascinating because it is a different type of peplum. It is a different type of historic epic. Um, there's a lot of melodramatic stuff in there that bogs it down, but on the other hand, there's some like, wow, they really did that in scale for this type of movie. So I will agree, it's definitely worth a watch. It's definitely worth a lot of analysis, and hopefully we can contribute to that. I
Yeah.
just wish it was a little less melodramatic, but
But I think that's the nature of the genre and more generally the films of the early 1960s. This came out in 1963. So there are aspects of the film that's a product of its time and the geopolitical things that were going on at the time,
and,
even.
and now, which we'll definitely talk about for sure.
Yeah.
So I guess the first thing to bring up is we keep calling it a peplum. It does not take place in antiquity, in ancient Rome or Greece. There's no Hercules or anything in it. But the beginning prologue, has a voiceover narrator that even talks about, oh, the kingdoms of Rome and Greece have fallen, and here's the Mayan kingdom and how, awesome they are. But, it is a lot of costumed folks with big set pieces doing stuff in historic times, swords clashing, things getting built. Uh, for all purposes, it's definitely historic epic, and I would call it
Mhm.
basically a Mesoamerican peplum. Um, and I have not seen the Mel Gibson Ap- Apocalyptico. I'm mispronouncing. I know that's the movie he made after his Passion of the Christ film. That's also with Mayans. And the funny thing is, the lead character in both films have the name of Jaguar. In Apocalyptico, it's Jaguar Paul, while in this film it's Balaam, the ninth Jaguar, because he's the ninth king. So I think it would be funny, not funny, fun to watch this movie side by side with that one to see, with today's, well, 20 years ago technology to kind of realize what might be a very similar plot.
Yeah, I have seen scenes from the Mel Gibson film, but yeah, I'm with you. I would really like to watch both of them and do a visit of Mel Gibson's film and pull what we've learned through our analysis of this film. I think that'd be interesting.
As a type of peplum, aside from it being Mesoamerican, it's more of a toga and sandal peplum in that there's a lot of political intrigue in it. The opening of the film is a big battle. The end of the film is a big battle, but between that is love triangle, which to me was very Bridget Jones' Diary, because just like watching Bridget Jones' Diary, which I have seen, I know you like that movie.
It's all right.
Uh, I think I watched it a few. There is the character she's supposed to go with, and you're like, why is she even entertaining that other guy? The other guy is poop. He won't take care. Same scenario in this. There's obviously the better suited person for her, but aside from the love triangle, there is like political maneuvering. There's um aides to King Balam that don't like him, that want to usurp him.
Yeah.
He's a new king, and this is one of my kind of conflicts with the film is I don't like his character because I think he's ineffectual as a leader, but on the other hand, it's successful because I think that's 100% what they're trying to go for is he's a brand new leader. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He's very emotional driven and prone to jealousy. And these are all usually traits you see like in a not a hero kind of character, but he is our hero. But but that's kind of I don't like it, but it's also what makes him interesting. So there's that kind of conflict for me. But he's also progressive because he doesn't want sacrifice. He doesn't want to do that anymore, which usually an emotive type person would want to continue doing that. And he also invents irrigation out of nowhere.
Yeah. I think to add to that, I think that all of the characters, there's enough like kind of twists with regards to the characters, and this is where I think there is a lot of interest and the critical discussion that's been out there before, saying this is a flop and stuff. Wasn't really paying attention to some of the character development in here, and the fact that like Balin, who was played by George
Chakrius, which you need to bring up here
Chakrius.
to us real quick.
Yeah, Chakrius is meant to be kind of that young upstart, and yet he's also intelligent. He's also looking at the way to forge not only the survival of his people, but also to gain the maturity of a leader, seeking out the assistance of his aides, also looking to the ineffectualness of past traditions and beliefs that he has that kind of bring his people forward and progress and being part of that progress, which I think is interesting. Who is the other girl? Shirley Ann Field, who plays Excel. She is a kind of a strong, independent female character, and I really thought that again, you've got a bit of a twist. You think that she should go with Yul Brynner's Black Eagle.
She should have.
She should have. I mean, because she is one of these people that kind of is also forging a way, and it does seem like the natural path for her would be to go that route, but then she stays with Balin. And then, of course, you have Black Eagle, played by Yul Brynner, who does a phenomenal job. I mean, his body is completely on display, and I know we'll probably get there.
Oh yeah, there's
So-
a body.
Yeah.
You can't talk about Peplum without
So-
body.
So I won't go any further on that because Nick has a nice outline. But I will say that Yul Brynner was 43, and man, he is in top condition, and you see a lot of his body. And I will say this was for the ladies, to be able to see so much of his body on display and to not be, well, anyway. So my George Chakiris story is that we met him at a Hollywood Collectors show in which they were doing a reunion of West Side Story actors. And so, like, I know you got Russ Tamman's autograph, you got Rita Moreno's autograph, I think.
So yeah, we took me, because I've never seen West Side Story. I took everything but West Side Story to be autographed. Russ Tamblyn signed my Frankenstein Godzilla film. I forget what it's called, Return of the Frankenstein Creature or whatever. All of a sudden, I just can't remember it. But it's a Godzilla film with the Frankenstein monster.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And then yeah, Rita Moreno signed my copy of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, because she voiced Carmen Sandiego.
And I've seen West Side Story, so obviously that's the one that I took. And George Chakiris is still alive and looks pretty darn good. Yeah, so he is in it as well. So
Little personal connections to this film.
yeah.
While I'm getting Hammer Horror ladies signing my copy.
Mhm.
So two more kind of peplum things to bring up is the movie kind of had a little bit in common with another film we talked about. I don't think you were on this episode, but we watched it together. But Iron Master, one of George Eastman, who gets exiled from his community and discovers
yes.
making
Mhm.
swords, and comes back to kill everyone. That's kind of like this film, because the Mayans have wooden swords, but then the main bad guy arrives with metal swords and kicks their butt. And it made me think of Iron Master,
Mhm.
but less George Eastman. And then a movie we did talk about was Atlantis: The Lost Continent, which has a similarity of the Mayans in here are sailing across the Gulf of Mexico, but they've never done that. They think it's the edge of the world, they're going to fall off or die or all that stuff. And it's very much like the Atlantis movies we've watched, especially Atlantis: Lost Continent, where they set sail for Atlantis and we don't know what's out there. It's edge of the world, we're gonna fall off, and then they find Atlantis. So it's kind of those little plot things that are just kind of genre staples that I think help solidify this film as kind of a different type of peplum.
Yeah, and I mean, always in all the peplums that we see, mythology is very important, and tradition, and that is not lost in this movie either, because we do have the mythology of the human sacrifice, the gods, um, and that's in comparison to Black Eagles, people, and how they're portrayed. They live off the land, they're nomadic people. And so you get a nice comparison and evaluation of societal approach and what works for both and what doesn't work. And the fact that they are, and this is an aspect of the film that I like, the fact that they are able to kind of come to a peaceful resolution to their struggles, started by Balin letting Black Eagle go, and then Black Eagle seeing, the advantage of helping each other and learning about each other's different cultural practices, beliefs.
The only
And
thing that breaks it up is people. They just get jealous of each other. You take out that bit, everyone would be in harmony. But
yeah,
so let's talk about bodies hitting the floor real quick. It's
Okay.
peplum. There's always a body on exhibition. There are no strongmen in this film. This is not a strongman film, so there's no equivalent of a Hercules or Ursus or Samson.
Yeah, not like a hyper masculinized physicality of a man in this.
You do have an oblique Hercules reference, though. Just like in Iron Master, the bad guy had the body and
Yeah.
Hercules get up with a lion skin.
Be right back. Keep going.
In this movie that you're describing, the jaguar, there are indications that the jaguar god was influenced by Europeans having reached the Americas, much earlier than we anticipated, because especially among the Mohica tribe, there are depictions of the jaguar god, one with wrestling with two snakes or choking two snakes and fighting something that looks very much like a hydra. So it is possible that there were Phoenician sailors who worshipped Hercules under the name Melkart. And he might have
Interesting.
brought over the mythology and it became part of the Jaguar mythology. So the Jaguar King uh, is like a faded echo of the Herculean ideal that inspired the Jaguar warriors.
That is really fascinating because, as we were saying, Balin was associated with Jaguar. And in fact, in the statement, that his father says, he says, Balin, a Jaguar, the eighth king type of thing. And then when Balin, the son, takes over, that Jaguar is still there. That's really fascinating, that there is that kind of tie. And honestly, Nick and I, when we were watching the film, we initially thought that the people that were coming in were going to be the conquistadors and things like that, and Cortez. So we were really surprised when, uh, Balin and his group were in the pyramid and they kind of close it up and things like that. And we find out that they're actually being attacked by another faction within their own culture, rather than the conquistadors. So that was actually really fascinating. Their other mythology is, as Nick was saying, that there had been other people that had sailed the Gulf, which they thought was a big ocean. They never came back. So, you're thinking that, well, they must have run into another Native American tribe, or maybe Black Eagle's tribe, because he does comment how, there's been others before this group. And, we don't know if they took care of them and killed them or what might have been the case. But that is fascinating about the jaguar, because I immediately thought that, that's related to jaguars in the jungle, but that brings a whole another aspect to that mythology. And they didn't go into a lot of detail with regards to their origin, other than this one mythology, this one story about sailing. And of course, Balin's men are concerned about falling off the end of the horizon type of thing. So go ahead.
Oh no, so just bodies, no strong men.
Yes.
Women are not on display either. The lead lady, she only gets like a wig that makes her have Betty Page bangs. But there's no vamps or seductresses, there's no exotic dance sequences really. I mean, there's shirtless dudes who work in the quarry and stuff like that, like like you would see like in a slave film.
But it's not gratuitous
No, no.
in any way.
Um, Although the tables are even though for all purposes they're slaves, they're not treated like slaves like you would see in a Roman film, which is a little different. But all that goes out the window for Yul Brynner. They give him the thongiest of thong. They tie him down like he's a Christ-like figure, which is ironic because
On multiple occasions, so that was not lost on us.
yeah. He gets stabbed in the side,
Yes,
just like a Christ-like figure.
Yes.
But oh yeah, that they are showing him. They are showing everything off for Yul Brynner. That's the main draw of the film. That's the hello ladies. That's the emphasis on the body is definitely Yul Brynner. Even so much like they give him like a ceremonial like robe that's made out of feathers. It's really pretty. You would think that he would, even be forced to wear it to be sacrificed. Oh no, that's all out the door. He's better than that because ladies and Yul Brynner. Come on.
Well, it is interesting how much control he has over the situation, even though he is a captive. Part of that mythology for the Mayans is, very respectful treatment, and although Black Eagle was stabbed in the side, it was done by a guard who was a little overzealous in his job. I don't even think that would have necessarily happened.
The way the event plays out, he gets captured, he's brought in, he's of course resisting because that's what you do.
Yes.
And as he's resisting, someone stabs him.
Yeah.
For all purposes at that point, he's just a captive, a jailed person, and he's probably going to die. And then they realize, oh, he'd make a great sacrifice. Let's get him better. Let's bring him back to life so he'll be a suitable sacrifice to the rain gods. And of course, Balaam's like, dude, I just invented irrigation. Come on. No, no, no. We still got to appease the gods. Gods didn't have nothing to do with this. This is us. Which is, I think, kind of a progressive way of thinking back then, I would think. And probably even nowadays, I guess, for, I don't know, cults and stuff going on, I suppose.
Well,
I guess.
definitely was progressive with regards to body image, and the fact that you didn't have women on display. You didn't have the belly dancing scene. She was Eggshell was actually working with the men as they were building the temple. She was there handing basket off of rocks, and other women were doing weaving, but they were also doing carvings. It was a community. Yeah, it was a community. And I mean, I'm sure there were tiers of the society, but in general, they were conveyed as a sense of community. The same with Black Eagles people.
It
was
interesting to get there though, because in the beginning, when they're fleeing, Balaam and his men are just upper class priests, soldiers, generals, and him, basically a top echelons of the hierarchy. They arrive at the fishing village, and basically the fishing village, like, you're a king, but we don't know you. You live so far away. Those are kind of peasants and, the common folks. And so right off the bat, it's like, we got to abduct all of you so you can make babies and build our stuff. And there is that undertone there that does. I mean, when they do arrive, it does kind of take a back seat because, hey, we're in a new world. We got to survive. Let's all pull together as one. And then that grows even more with the Black Eagles tribe. But there is still that underlying tiers, like you were saying. There's some classicism just beyond what you can normally see. I do want to point out an interesting scene of where I was bringing up earlier how I thought kind of Balaam's an ineffectual leader, which I didn't like, but I also get. He vowed he was going to marry Ishel to her father, but her father dies immediately. And so they're in the new world. And he's like, my first order of business in this new world as your new king is I'm going to marry that woman.
Because that was his vow. And he was keeping that promise because it wasn't just his people. It was her people. And they're all together. And so, for a show of community and a sense of being an us rather than a us and them type of thing.
But she shoots him down. She says, you know what, that vow is canceled out. My father's like, you don't have to marry me. And it's like, she says no to him. And he's in front of all his new people. And he basically was told no. And that was his first big order that doesn't even get off the ground. And all of a sudden, the priests kind of take over, like, okay, let's do this. And he just kind of walks meekly behind him. Again, to me, it's like fascinating. I don't like just my viewing expectation, I don't usually see that with a hero in a film, but they're doing that in this film, and it works. It's just so not what I'm used to. It's why I think it's fascinating.
Yes, and makes it a different kind of film and should not be immediately disregarded or considered a flop because it's actually making some interesting statements and exploring different character personalities. And instead of taking the road traveled by established tropes, they do try to do some different things with this film through their characters.
Not just their characters, but just kind of the general idea of this. For all kind of purposes, this is kind of a different type of take on what would be. I don't mean this pejoratively, but that's kind of the term back in the day. But cowboys versus Indians movies. It was
Mhm.
very colonialist. Cowboys coming in, Native Americans are savages, always the bad guys. And you kind of have that in this, except instead of cowboys, you have other Indigenous Americans. And the weird thing is, you basically have a story of Indigenous Americans versus Indigenous Americans versus Indigenous Americans. The difference being Mexican Indigenous Americans and Texas. but Black Eagle and his men, they're dressed up like they're kind of like a combination of a whole bunch of different Native American tribes, which is probably not accurate. Of course, we don't watch these movies for accuracy, do we? But that's interesting. And then they're all displaced. And you were talking about, at the time and what's going on nowadays, Gaza, Palestine, immigration, and whatnot, people displaced from their lands to other places, and it's still a what do you do about that? Here's Balaam and his men, people displaced from the Yucatan Peninsula. They're now in Texas. They're now stopped being the displaced people and now they're the conquerors of a land that has other people in it.
Mhm.
It's interesting. I am no geopolitical person, so I can't really go further on that, but there is that there to talk about. And you were talking to me last night about 1960s Bay of Pigs and Cuba and stuff like that.
Yeah, just the fact that when this film came out was in 1963. The Cuban Missile Crisis was in late of 1962, and we have these two different sets of indigenous people in that kind of area clashing. You've got the rise of Fidel Castro in the, I think, mid 50s. But you're still having a lot of Cuban people that are, getting on a boat and they're, trying to find a new way of life, one where they can flourish. And so you
Just like this film.
just like this film. So I thought that was actually a fascinating statement about trying to find a peaceful coexistence. And, honestly, I didn't feel like either group of people were bad. They were trying
Well,
to
except for
navigate.
Hudak Keel.
Well, yes,
Yeah,
who didn't kill?
he's a bad guy.
Yeah, he's the bad guy. But for a while, you think that Black Eagle and their group were the bad people, but they really weren't. They were just another group, and they're trying to find a way to navigate, mediate, and coexist. And I think that with what was going on in the world, and particularly in Central America at the time, I think it's fascinating that we have this film and talking about some of these type of issues within this film.
Displaced people into other.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the other hand, the depiction of said displaced people, this is a brown face movie. And
Yeah.
this, just like when we talked about the Tartars with Orson Welles doing Yellowface as the Mongolian king there, this movie has two different extremes. One, really inappropriate blackface, but that was the time. Just don't do that anymore. Or two, they have the pastiest of white people playing some folks that it's just well, they
Okay, Richard Basehart. Let's just go there. He plays the primary priest, and there's even comments in notes and interviews and things like that that he's got this really obnoxious gray-haired wig that just looks absolutely ridiculous. There's some bad choices there. And whitewashing, which has continued to be a problem, was definitely a problem in this time, and for this film as well. And I even commented when, they pan across and you see these different people, and I'm like, wow, that's a really very bad. That is such a white person, it's really crazy. And even Shirley Ann Field, gorgeous woman, beautiful pale eyes, but she's got this ridiculous Betty Page
Wig.
long-haired wig on. And it yeah, she looks pretty pasty in comparison to a lot of the others. Yul Brynner had the best tan. Going. And I looked at the list of people.
Well, side note, Hugh Brenner is this naturally exotic looking, and so this movie
Yes,
is,
he is.
aside from his body, they're capitalizing on that. That's how you're getting this exoticism is through him.
Yeah, I mean, this is Orientalism,
Mhm.
embodied by Yul Brynner, in so many ways, especially given that, he was born in Russia. He has, Eastern European kind of voice, very deep. He's very exotic. And I mean, yeah, they definitely capitalize on this. And this is after, he's been in like Magnificent Seven from 1960.
Wow, Magnificent Seven is from 1960?
Yeah, I looked it up. And in fact, Brad Dexter was Khaled, and he was also in the Magnificent Seven. And I know Brad Dexter was like I think one of the seven. So I thought that was really, really interesting that we had that. And I don't remember which priest he was, but I'm sure he looked pretty white.
And technically, I could talk a little bit earlier. This
Yeah.
movie does have shades of Western in it, even though it's 400 years before what we'd see normally as the Western. But with the presence of American indigenous folks, they're portrayed just like you would see, dress wise, I should say, and setting and huts and stuff like that
Yeah.
is no different than what you would see in a Western in a way.
Yeah, I think one thing that's kind of interesting, you don't see a lot of animals in this, which, I think is kind of indicative of some of the peplums, more traditional peplums, like especially the Roman, and the fact that, when we talked about,
They're alluded to a lot, but not shown.
yeah, they're alluded to, but they don't spend a lot of time, and that could have been budget constraints or whatever, but like the Native Americans are running or walking, to different places. I do want to make a comment with regards to Yul Brynner, um, his exoticism, and that is the way like he even walks. Like he's definitely different from anybody else in the group, and you just can't help but watch him.
And his dialogue's on the more poetic side as well.
Yeah, and we actually thought that a fair amount of the dialogue had some really interesting things to say, and very observant. I didn't write any of them down, and this is partly why I would love to, watch the film again, now that I've seen it all the way through, and watch for some more of those details. But there was definitely dialogue that alluded to rather enlightened and insightful um, aspects to both of these cultures, and how they were initially clashing and then eventually came together. So
Really, the last big point I want to bring up is I can't talk about human sacrifice without bringing up Rene Girard. And of course, it's been a while since I've dived into the world of Rene Girard, but one of his books, Violence in the Sacred, is the idea that folks perform sacrifices to stave off violence. And that's kind of what the Mayans are doing in this film. They're sacrificing folks in order to appease the angry gods and have, good planting water, good things to come and stuff like that. I guess the irony is the movie really only has one sacrifice, really. And I know the priest kind of kills himself to try to fill that void, but the only like real ritual sacrifices in the very beginning of the film. And of course, what happens right after that? The story moves immediately to the bad guy trying to conquer everyone. So the sacrifice did not work. Violence came upon everyone and forced them off into a new land and stuff. So kind of an interesting take on that belief. And of course, Balaam is actually kind of, using his, even though he's young and still kind of inexperienced, but he's again that progressive way of saying that doesn't make sense. Let's stop that. Guess only other things to kind of point out, costumes were cool. It's very peplumy, but instead of seeing like Roman armor and Greek Spartan, shields and all that stuff, they have, feathers and turquoise and straw shields and stuff. But, it's just a different take on, what peplum people are wearing. They're just not peplums.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're swords. It's a sword and sandal film, just with a different attire, but they look cool. I mean, I'm sorry, the cover for this movie is the artwork is awesome. I mean, it's showing Blom fighting Yul Brynner, and at first I thought he was a conquistador, but he's got this turquoise armor on, a leopard cape and everything. I mean, they try to replicate that in the movie, but it looks good. The costuming is good. There is, again, I think the movie is a little lacking because of melodrama, but the production in this film is pretty top notch. Except for the opening matte painting, that one's terrible. But there's people everywhere. The costumes look good. The sets look good. There was effort put into making this a big, grandiose, historic epic.
Yeah, I want to draw attention to cinematography. I know.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, so there's another Magnificent Seven, I think Magnificent Seven connection, and that is the narrator was James Colburn. I think he's in Magnificent Seven. Nick is gonna look that up while I'm
I know James Colburn's been in his fair share of stuff.
Yeah. So another kind of Western connection, but there is some definitely gorgeous lighting, particularly on
Magnificent Seven.
Okay, there we go. There's some really fascinating lighting, especially when Yul Brynner starts connecting that he is going to be the sacrifice, and the way he moves back, he's in full light, and then as he backs away, he becomes more and more shadowed. It's very nice.
He was Britt the knife expert.
Oh,
Brad
yeah.
Dexter was Harry Luck, the fortune seeker.
Okay.
And then, of course, Yul Brynner is the gunslinger, the leader.
Yeah. The other thing is the music is very atypical or very typical of Peplum films. The music was by Elmer Bernstein, so of course it's loud, it's epic, it's dramatic, it's
fanfare.
It's right in line with what you would expect with other Peplum films. But I did think that the choreography, actually the choreography of the fighting was I thought actually well done.
The sounds for the choreography.
Well, there like the fight between Black Eagle and Balaam was actually done well. I thought it was choreographed pretty well. The sounds related to Balin fighting the bad guy. What was his name?
Unik Keel.
Yeah.
Ping.
Yeah.
Ping.
Ping. They needed better Foley sounds for that bit. But, that aside, there, as Nick said, there was very good production. It actually had a $4 million budget. So for 1963, that's not too bad, for this film. Apparently it made 1.6 million. So yeah, I mean, financially it's a flop. But I think that there's a lot of other aspects to the film that warrant a look, and I would definitely recommend the film.
I do too. Again, it's not great, but it's not bad. It's fancy. This one was filmed, I think, in the hands of a different editor. You could probably get a shorter film that feels a little bit more action oriented. With you could still have the love triangle, but it's not so grown. I think it's in the editing, and maybe a little bit of sound design with ping, ping. I think it could be done that this would be a genuine uh undiscovered treasure of golden age epics. It's there. It really is.
Yeah.
And I cannot believe I didn't realize James Colburn did the narration.
I saw that and I'm like, what?
7 people. That is crazy. That's awesome.
At least I'm sure there's another connection in there somewhere.
There's
that
probably
just-
some producer and cinematographer that probably worked on it.
But that is our take, and I know we're coming up to the end of the hour, so we humbly and respectfully return the torch from scholars to you, Hercules.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent analysis, and you piqued my curiosity. Now I want to see the movie, see if I remember having seen it or not. But it sounds fascinating and different.
It is different, and not in a bad way. I know we watched what She Is Conan. That's different. This is a different type of different. Definitely recommend different.
Well, different is good.
Yeah.
It
I'm
especially
definitely
makes
gonna
me
look
want to
for it.
watch the Mel Gibson film, especially since the Mel Gibson film, I think Apocalyptico, he actually tried to cast like indigenous Mayan actors and actresses in it.
I think
I-
that was one of the things that he did with that film.
Another compare and contrast to do. But anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, sir.
We liked Apocalypto. My wife and I saw it when it first came out a few times, and we really liked the movie then. It was that too. That was very different.
Yes.
Kitty.
Our producer is telling us to wrap it up.
Yeah.
But you can find me. I do have a website. I'm sorry, I'm just not like huge on socials. It's all Nick, but I do have a website and I do have a Amazon page. I love cat videos. What can I say? Over to you.
I'm at nickdiak.com. That's where I put my writing, links to all the vidcasts and podcasts that we're on. Michele did mention earlier, but she has a vidcast with our friend Travis that she talks
That's
about Lost. She's been a guest on another podcast recently called Fan to Fan, talking about Nosferatu. And
that's
I've got
true.
links to all that stuff at my website. So it's a pretty good hub to check out what we're working on.
And thank you for preserving all the shows that you guys were on Blog Talk Radio. A few people preserved their shows, but most didn't.
Aw.
So thank you for preserving that part of the journey. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I've got MP3 saved of everything, and I was actually going to ask your permission if, maybe start uploading them to like archive.org or something, get them preserved.
That would be awesome. I would really be honored if you did that. Thank you again, and I'm looking forward already to next month, and I think I will give a call between now and then just to say hi and see how you guys are doing.
Well, we wish you the very best. Next month starts summer, so we hope you have a great start to the summer season.
Yes, and all your projects that you have going on.
Thank you. The same to you. And thanks to everybody who tuned in tonight. Until next time, joyous journeys and amazing adventures.